I was in the middle of a client presentation, halfway through explaining our strategy, when the conference room door opened. At first, I thought it was just someone bringing in the projector cables we requested. But instead, a man in a crisp black suit walked in, asked for me by name, and handed me an envelope with a cold, rehearsed line, "You've been served." The room fell silent. My boss looked confused, and my teammates stared. My hands went numb as I took the envelope and watched him walk out like he'd just dropped off a pizza. But what he delivered was something much worse: divorce papers. From my wife. Served at my job. In front of everyone. For a few seconds, I just stood there, unsure whether to laugh or explode. I had no idea things had gotten this bad. Sure, we'd been having issues, distant dinners, quiet rides, her always staying late at the office, but I never thought she'd blindside me like this. No fight, no warning, just legal documents delivered like a package from Amazon. And that wasn't the worst part. Inside the envelope, her lawyer made demands like I was the villain in this story. Half the house, full custody of our daughter, and spousal support that would have left me bankrupt. It felt like she was trying to erase me from my own life. But what he didn't know when he arrogantly handed me those papers in front of everyone, was that I had an envelope of my own. I had stayed quiet for months, not because I was clueless, but because I was watching, because I was documenting. Every late night, every suspicious phone call, every fake work trip she took when she thought I wasn't paying attention, I collected it all. And tucked away in my briefcase was everything I needed to destroy the carefully crafted lie she was trying to sell in court. The irony is, I once loved her more than anything. We met in college, built a life from the ground up, and swore we'd never be one of those couples who let things fall apart. But somewhere along the line, she gave up. And instead of being honest, she chose betrayal dressed up in a business suit. She didn't want to fix things, she wanted to win. What she didn't realize was that this wasn't a game she could win by being cruel. I didn't say anything to her lawyer that day. I just looked at him, smiled faintly, and pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for weeks. I handed it to him with the same calmness he'd given me. "You might want to read that before you file anything," I said. He looked confused, opened it right there in the hallway outside the boardroom, and I swear I saw the color drain from his face. Inside were copies of text messages, hotel receipts, and photos. Not just of her, but of her and the man she swore was just a colleague. A man who, as it turned out, had a wife of his own. And what followed after that moment would unravel every single thread of her story, both in court and in front of the people she thought she had fooled. But the part that changed everything wasn't the evidence itself. It was what I found after I confronted her, something that would take this story from courtroom drama to a complete emotional reckoning. Rewinding back a few months before I was served at work, things between me and my wife, Amanda, had already started to shift. It wasn't something obvious at first, just little things. She stopped asking how my day was. She used to greet me at the door with a smile, or at least a nod, but now, most nights she was glued to her phone, barely acknowledging me. I told myself she was just stressed. Work had been rough on both of us. She was newly promoted to a management role at her firm, and I was swamped with back-to-back deadlines. I wanted to believe that was all it was, just a phase. But then came the excuses. Late meetings, networking events, girls' nights that didn't add up. I remember one night, she came home smelling like cologne. Not perfume, not alcohol, but a distinctly masculine cologne I didn't recognize. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off and told me I was being paranoid. And maybe I was. Maybe I just didn't want to accept the truth that was slowly creeping in. Still, something inside me didn't sit right. So I started paying closer attention. I wasn't trying to play detective, at least, not at first. But then I noticed the small details. A hotel charge that didn't match up with her supposed conference dates. A text message that popped up on her phone from a name I'd never seen before. T. No emoji, no explanation, just "see you tonight." When I asked her who it was, she said it was a coworker, a client, something vague. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't unsee the doubt that had started to take root in my mind. That's when I decided I needed proof. Not revenge, not drama, just the truth. I contacted a private investigator, someone a friend had used during his own custody battle. I felt strange doing it, like I was betraying her trust even though I was the one being lied to. But within a week, the PI had everything. Photos, hotel bookings, even recordings. She wasn't just stepping out. She was building a life with someone else behind my back. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time. Time to figure out what this meant for me, for our daughter, for everything we'd built. That envelope I gave her lawyer, it wasn't just revenge. It was protection. Because in those divorce papers she served me, she had made me out to be the unfit parent. She claimed I was emotionally unavailable, that I worked too much, that I couldn't be trusted with our child. Meanwhile, she was sneaking off for weekend getaways with someone else's husband. The hypocrisy was unbearable. What she didn't realize was how deeply that lie cut. She didn't just want to leave me. She wanted to ruin me. Take our daughter, drain me financially, and pretend she was the victim in all of it. But I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story to suit her version of events. I had been quiet for too long. Now, it was her turn to explain herself. Still, even with all the evidence in my hands, a part of me kept wondering, why? Why did she do this? What changed? And more importantly, what else was she hiding? Because when I finally sat down to confront her face to face, I realized the lies I uncovered were only the beginning. What she said next made me question everything I thought I knew about our marriage, and what she was really trying to escape from. The night I finally confronted Amanda, I thought I was prepared. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say over and over in my head. But when she walked into the living room and saw the folders sitting on the coffee table, her face shifted. She froze. Her eyes locked on mine, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't look annoyed or indifferent. She looked scared. I calmly gestured for her to sit. She didn't speak, just sat down slowly, like she already knew what was coming. I opened the folder and laid out the evidence. Photos of her with him, screenshots of text messages, hotel receipts, plane tickets. Her hands trembled slightly, but she stayed quiet. All this time, I said, barely holding back the emotion, you were building a case against me, calling me unfit, while you were out doing this. She didn't deny it. She just stared at the floor, then whispered, "It's not what you think." That sentence made my blood boil. After everything, that's what she had to say? What do I think, Amanda? That you cheated? Lied? Tried to take my daughter away from me? What part of that am I getting wrong? She finally looked up at me, and for a brief moment, I saw the woman I used to know, the one I married. She sighed, then said, "I didn't want it to end like this. I just wanted out." That was the first time she admitted it. She wanted out of the marriage. Not to fix it, not to try therapy, not even to coexist. She had already emotionally moved on, and this entire thing, the lies, the affair, the brutal legal attack, was just her exit strategy. But there was something off in her voice. Not guilt, not regret, fear. That's when I realized she wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was running from something, or someone. In the days that followed, more pieces began falling into place. I discovered that the man she was seeing, Trevor, the so-called colleague, wasn't just married. He was under investigation at his own company. Financial fraud, corporate leaks, serious stuff. And Amanda? She was connected to his accounts. Her name showed up in transfers, shared bookings, and worst of all, some of the transactions I thought were part of our joint investments had been rerouted. Suddenly, this wasn't just about cheating. It was about betrayal on a whole different level. I began looking deeper into our finances. With the help of a friend who worked in forensic accounting, I found that money from our joint savings had been slowly siphoned off. Small amounts at first, then larger. She had set up a separate account I didn't know about. The worst part? Some of it was in our daughter's name. Like she was planning to disappear and cover her tracks using our child's identity. Every time I thought I'd uncovered the worst of it, something new surfaced. And the court case hadn't even started yet. I was still the one being portrayed as unstable. Her lawyer was aggressive, making bold claims backed by nothing but her carefully crafted narrative. But what they didn't count on was that I wasn't just angry, I was prepared. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more. Amanda wasn't just avoiding eye contact in court because she felt guilty, she was terrified. And as I followed the paper trail and pieced together more of Trevor's background, I started to understand why. Because this wasn't just a messy divorce, this was about to get dangerous. I couldn't sleep. Every night felt like a war zone in my head. Questions, theories, flashes of Amanda's face when I confronted her, and the pieces of information that didn't fully add up. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It felt like something darker. The more I uncovered about Trevor, the more I realized Amanda wasn't just emotionally involved. She was entangled. Whether willingly or under pressure, I couldn't be sure. But something told me this ran deeper than a simple affair. A few days before our first court hearing, I got an anonymous message. No name, just a phone number and a single line. She doesn't know everything. You're in danger too. My hands went cold. I didn't know who sent it or why, but I wasn't about to ignore it. I forwarded it to my investigator, and later that night, he called with an urgent tone I hadn't heard before. Trevor isn't just some guy at her office, he said. He's connected to a shell corporation that's being investigated by federal agencies. Your wife may have unknowingly, or maybe knowingly, helped him move funds through your accounts. If that's true, and if your name is attached to any of it, you could get pulled in. My stomach turned. I had been worried about losing custody. Now I might lose my reputation, my career, even my freedom. I had to act fast, but smart. I started gathering everything: transaction records, Amanda's emails, backup files she thought she deleted. I worked late into the night, desperate to stay one step ahead. At the same time, Amanda's behavior changed again. She started calling me, showing up unannounced, even asking if we could talk things through for the sake of our daughter. It felt like manipulation at first, but there was something else, genuine panic in her voice. Her confident, cold demeanor was gone. She seemed scared. One night, she showed up at my apartment crying. She told me she made a mistake, that she didn't know Trevor's full story until it was too late, that he had threatened her when she tried to end it. I wanted to believe her, but trust was already broken. And her timing? Suspicious. The court hearing was days away. Her sudden remorse felt like another tactic. But then she said something that changed everything. He knows you found the documents. He told me. If you don't stop, he'll come after you next. That stopped me cold. I had thought Amanda was selfish, manipulative, even cruel. But now it seemed like she might be a pawn in something bigger. And if Trevor was willing to use her, there was no reason he wouldn't try to silence me too. I started noticing strange things. A car parked across from my apartment that hadn't moved in 2 days. A call from a block number where no one spoke, just breathed. Even my emails were acting strange, some messages missing, others unread when I swore I opened them. The courtroom was no longer my biggest concern. Now, I had to prove my innocence, protect my daughter, and expose a man who clearly had a lot to lose. Everything was coming to a head, and with the hearing just hours away, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. It was about survival. The morning of the court hearing, I was running on 3 hours of sleep and a mountain of anxiety. I had everything organized: documents, records, statements from the private investigator. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go very wrong. Amanda hadn't called or texted since the night she showed up crying. It had been complete silence. For a brief moment, I hoped maybe she was backing down. Maybe she realized how far this had gone. But as I pulled into the courthouse parking lot, that hope vanished. 2 black SUVs were parked outside the entrance. Men in suits stood near the doors, speaking into radios. I knew immediately they weren't with the courthouse staff. As I stepped out of my car, one of them glanced at me, then looked away. It felt like a warning. I wasn't sure if they were watching Amanda, Trevor, or me. Inside the courtroom, Amanda sat at the table with her lawyer, looking pale and distant. She avoided my eyes entirely. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. Trevor was nowhere to be seen. That alone raised alarms. For someone who was so deeply involved, his absence screamed of guilt or fear. Just before the session began, my attorney leaned toward me and said, "We received a new piece of evidence this morning. Someone dropped it off anonymously. It's a USB drive." I felt my pulse quicken. We plugged it into the laptop, and what popped up on screen made my head spin. Video footage. Security camera recordings from an underground parking garage. Amanda and Trevor arguing. But not the kind of argument you'd expect from lovers in trouble. He was shouting, waving something in her face. She was crying, backing away, and then he grabbed her arm. Forcefully, threateningly. There was audio, but it was choppy. Still, I could make out one sentence that sent chills down my spine. "If I go down, you're going with me. And your husband too." My attorney's face turned pale. This changes everything. Suddenly, Amanda wasn't just a cheating spouse. She was a potential victim caught in something dangerous. But the twist didn't end there. As the court was called into session, a clerk entered and handed the judge a sealed envelope. The judge read it silently, then looked up at both legal teams with a stern expression. "This hearing will be paused. he said. New evidence has been submitted involving an ongoing federal investigation. And just like that, the courtroom emptied. Agents appeared from the hallway, asking for Amanda to step into a private room. Her lawyer followed, protesting. I wasn't asked anything, just told to stay put. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your home security. Now, I left the courthouse immediately, drove straight home. When I pulled into my driveway, my heart nearly stopped. The front door was wide open. Not kicked in, not broken, just open. I grabbed my phone and called the police, but I didn't go inside. I waited, barely breathing, eyes locked on the entrance of the home I thought I was protecting all this time. When the officers arrived and cleared the house, they told me no one was inside. Nothing appeared to be stolen. But one thing had been left behind. On the kitchen table, a manila envelope with no name. Inside was a single photo. It was me, holding the original envelope I gave Amanda's lawyer. And written across the photo, in red marker, were the words, "You should have walked away." I stared at the photo in my hands, heart pounding like a war drum. Someone had been inside my house. They hadn't taken anything, but they'd left a message, loud and clear. I wasn't just involved anymore. I was being hunted. And whoever left that envelope knew everything. The exact moment I handed over the evidence. The exact look on my face. That photo was taken up close, too close. I spent the night locked inside my home with every light on and the security camera feeds open on my phone. Sleep didn't come. My mind was racing. I kept going over the timeline, trying to figure out what I missed. Amanda had said Trevor would come after me if I didn't stop. But I wasn't stopping. I was digging deeper. I had to know how far this went and how to end it. The next morning, I got a call from my investigator. He sounded breathless. Trevor's gone. Disappeared. The feds can't find him. But listen, there's more. That USB drive wasn't from someone inside the agency. It came from Amanda. That didn't make sense. She gave it to you? No, she mailed it. From a different state. It was postmarked before she came to your place crying. She knew what he was planning, and she tried to warn you without tipping him off. For a moment, my anger toward her shifted. She wasn't completely innocent, but maybe she had been trying to make it right in her own messed up way. I told him about the photo and the break-in. He went quiet. Then he said, "You need to disappear for a while. Don't go home. Don't go to work. Don't call anyone you don't trust." I grabbed a bag, took my daughter, and went to a cabin my uncle owned upstate. No signal, no cameras, no one around. Just quiet. I spent the next few days speaking with the federal investigators, handing over everything. My copy of the USB drive, the financial records, even the envelope with the photo. They confirmed Trevor was officially a fugitive. Multiple identities, fake companies, offshore accounts. Amanda had gotten tangled in something huge, and by trying to escape, she pulled me into it. The court hearing was rescheduled under heavy protection. This time, it wasn't about the divorce. It was about Amanda's cooperation as a witness. And thanks to the documents I gave them, I was cleared of all suspicion. My custody rights were restored, and the court dismissed her initial claims. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But just a week later, as I was packing up the cabin to return home, I found something wedged under the front door. Another photo. This time, it wasn't of me. It was of my daughter, at a playground near our home. The photo was recent. Clear. No message. Just the image. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. Trevor may have vanished, but his reach hadn't. He was still out there, watching. And now, it wasn't just about revenge or cover-ups. It was about keeping my daughter safe. Because the truth didn't just destroy Amanda's case. It exposed a threat that was far from over. I stood there holding the photo, feeling a different kind of fear, one that settles deep in your chest and doesn't let go. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about safety, about knowing someone out there, someone dangerous, had eyes on my daughter. And no matter how far I thought I'd gotten from the chaos, it had followed me to the one place I thought was safe. I reported the photo immediately. The agents assigned to Amanda's case took it seriously. They confirmed it hadn't come from inside their system, which meant Trevor was still operating under the radar. Amanda, now under full federal protection, agreed to testify against him. She gave up everything. Emails, messages, bank details. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear. Either way, it helped. The authorities widened the search, froze accounts, and issued alerts. But Trevor, as always, was one step ahead. In the months that followed, life was quiet, but not in the peaceful way. I enrolled my daughter in a new school under a different name, installed top-level security at home, and kept my circle small. No social media, no routines. Every time I dropped her off or picked her up, I looked over my shoulder. Every unknown number gave me a jolt. I hated that this became our new normal, but I also knew I'd do anything to keep her safe. Amanda and I spoke once more. Not as enemies, not even as exes, just two people who had survived something ugly. She apologized, not just for the affair, but for everything. For turning our lives into a battlefield. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Some damage runs too deep for words to fix. But I saw in her eyes that she meant it, that she knew what it cost. Eventually, the investigation slowed down. No new sightings of Trevor. No more photos. Just silence. It wasn't closure, but it was something close to it. I went back to work, carefully, and started rebuilding my life. Not from scratch, but from the pieces that were left. My daughter adjusted better than I did. Kids are resilient like that. But I made sure she always knew she was safe. That I'd always be there. That no matter what storm came our way, we'd get through it together. Looking back, it's strange how one envelope, just a thin piece of paper handed to me in a crowded office, set off a chain of events that nearly unraveled everything. My marriage, my reputation, my peace of mind. But it also uncovered the truth. And as painful as that was, I'd rather live with the truth than a lifetime of lies. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that silence isn't safety. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Ignoring it only gives it time to grow. Whether it's a distant spouse, a sudden shift in behavior, or a story that doesn't add up, listen to your gut. Because sometimes, that instinct is the only thing standing between you and disaster. I never saw Trevor again. Maybe one day he'll surface. Maybe not. But I'm no longer living in fear. I've taken back control of my life, my home, and my future. And while I didn't ask for any of this, I'm grateful for one thing. It showed me who I really am when everything's on the line. A survivor, a father, and someone who refused to be broken.